One night, during a discourse, Buddha was delivering his sermon. As always, many devotees were attentively listening to his words. The atmosphere was serious, peaceful, and filled with wisdom. In the midst of this, a man sitting right in front of Buddha started dozing off repeatedly. Sometimes his eyes would close, and sometimes he would suddenly wake up startled. For a few moments, Buddha observed this and then, smiling, asked him, "My child, are you sleeping?" The man, startled, quickly woke up and replied nervously, "No, master." Buddha continued his discourse, but after a while, the same man started nodding off again. Buddha again asked, "My child, are you sleeping?" Once again, the man jolted awake and replied, "No, master." This happened about 8 to 10 times. Buddha would continue his sermon, and whenever the man dozed off, he would interrupt and ask. Seeing this, the entire assembly began smiling. Buddha's clever question. Now Buddha asked the man a new question. "My child, are you alive?" As he had been responding without thinking, the man again instantly replied, "No, master." Hearing this, the entire assembly burst into laughter. People laughed wholeheartedly. The man also fully woke up now. He realized his mistake and carelessness. Buddha's profound teaching. Buddha, now in a serious tone, said, "My child, in your sleep you spoke the truth. One who remains in ignorance is as good as dead." Buddha then explained, "Smorange Diamond, a life of laziness and ignorance is no better than death. Smorange Diamond, while receiving wisdom, complete awareness is essential. Smorange Diamond, a careless person can never attain true knowledge, and half-baked knowledge is always dangerous." Key lessons from the story. 1. Awareness is essential for learning. Half-hearted learning leads to a directionless life. Whenever we seek knowledge, we should do so with full attention and devotion. 2. Laziness is like death. A person who lives lazily destroys their own future. It is not enough to be physically alive. One must also be mentally and intellectually active. 3. Half-knowledge is dangerous. If we try to learn without full attention and understanding, it may lead to harmful consequences. That is why, when gaining knowledge, we must give it our complete focus and dedication. The ultimate truth. A person lost in laziness and ignorance is no different from the dead. True life is one that is filled with awareness, dedication, and a strong desire for knowledge. Be alert, keep learning, and make your life meaningful. Once upon a time, there was a small river that flowed between the boundaries of 2 villages. People lived on both sides of the river and depended on its water for their daily needs. The river's water was the main source of livelihood for the villagers. Farmers irrigated their fields with it, cattle herders gave it to their animals, and households used it for various domestic purposes. The river's water was pure and abundant, allowing both villages to live peacefully for many years. However, one day the situation changed. Coincidentally, that year there was less rainfall, and the river's water level began to drop. Gradually, the water supply decreased, leading to tension among the villagers. One day, some people from both villages met at the riverbank and started arguing. "You people are taking more water than us." "No, you are using more water without considering our needs." Slowly, the argument escalated, and anger and hatred grew between them. Instead of resolving the issue, they began blaming each other. Soon, the entire village got involved in the conflict. People took up weapons, ready to attack each other. The situation became extremely serious. Both sides were prepared for bloodshed. Some wise and peace-loving villagers tried to stop the fight, but they failed. Finally, someone went to inform Lord Buddha about the situation. Buddha arrived with his disciples and called the representatives of both villages. In a calm voice, Buddha asked, "Tell me, why are you fighting?" The representatives from both villages presented their arguments. "Lord, these people are taking more than their share of water." "No, Lord. They are using too much water and depriving us of it." Both sides were filled with rage and frustration. Buddha listened carefully and then smiled as he asked, "How do you plan to resolve this dispute?" In their anger, both representatives said, "We will spill rivers of blood." Buddha, in a serious tone, asked, "So you want blood?" Hearing this, both representatives were taken aback. They remained silent for a few moments. Then one of them spoke. "No, we want water." Buddha calmly said, "If you want water, how will spilling blood give you water? Bloodshed will only lead to more bloodshed. After pausing for a moment, Buddha continued, remember, violence breeds more violence. Hatred only increases hatred. If you fight, only destruction will follow, but your real problem will not be solved. Pointing towards the river, Buddha said, learn from this river. It never fights anyone, yet provides water to all. If it were selfish, could it quench the thirst of so many? Buddha's words opened their eyes. They realized that fighting never solves any problem. They dropped their weapons and mutually decided to share the river's water fairly. From then on, both villages peacefully and justly distributed the river's water. The dispute ended and harmony was restored once again. Lessons from the story. Violence is never the solution to any problem. Decisions made in anger and ego lead to destruction, while patience and wisdom lead to solutions. Nature teaches us selfless service, just like the river provides water to all without discrimination. With intelligence and patience, any dispute can be resolved. Resources should be used fairly and collectively, not selfishly. Whenever a problem arises in life, always try to solve it with peace and wisdom. Fighting and conflicts only lead to loss and suffering. True peace lies in love, tolerance, and compassion. In a city, there lived an enthusiastic and inquisitive young man. His mind was always occupied with one question: what is the ultimate truth of life? He had no interest in the glitter and illusion of this world. His heart was always engaged in the quest for truth. One day, he approached a famous fakir in the city and said, Gurudev, I am searching for the truth. I want to know, what is this life, this world, and everything around us? Please accept me as your disciple and show me the path to the ultimate truth. The fakir smiled at his curiosity and said, my child, attaining the truth is not easy. It requires immense patience, courage, and sacrifice. The young man replied, I am ready to endure any hardship. Just lead me to the truth. The fakir thought for a moment and then said, if you truly wish to attain the truth, you must go to the place where this world ends. Only there will you find the ultimate truth. The young man was overjoyed. He sought permission from the fakir and embarked on his journey in search of the truth. The young man began his journey. He traveled from city to city, village to village. He met saints, scholars, and sages, asking them about the truth, but each one gave him a different answer. He kept moving forward, crossing rivers, climbing mountains, and traversing forests. After many years of wandering, he finally reached a village that was known as the last village of the world. The young man asked the villagers, is this really the last village in the world? The villagers replied, yes, this is the last village. There is no road beyond this point. He then asked, how far is the end of the world? An elderly man answered, just a little ahead, you will see a signboard that says, here the world ends. But we warn you, do not go there. There is a dreadful abyss beyond that point, so deep that no one can see its bottom. People say that whoever looks into it either runs away in fear or falls into it and perishes. The young man said, I am on a quest for truth. I must go there. The villagers tried hard to stop him, but he was determined. He continued walking forward. After some time, he arrived at the place where the signboard stood. It clearly read, here the world ends. Do not go further. His heart began to race, but he did not stop. He stepped past the signboard and looked ahead. In front of him was a horrifying abyss, so deep that its bottom was invisible. It was an endless void, and as soon as he gazed into it, he felt as if he was being pulled into it. Fear gripped him. His body trembled, his courage faltered. His eyes widened in terror, and his breathing became rapid. He could endure no more. He turned and ran as fast as he could. Without stopping, he rushed straight back to his fakir guru. As soon as the fakir saw his disciple in a fearful state, he smiled and asked, what happened? You had set out in search of the truth. Did you find it? The young man, still trembling, replied, Gurudev, I reached the place where it was written that the world ends. When I looked beyond it, I saw a terrifying, bottomless abyss. I was so frightened that I ran away. The fakir calmly asked, what was written on the other side of the signboard? The young man was startled. He said, Gurudev, I did not read it. The place was so terrifying that I fled in fear. The fakir, in a serious tone, said, "My child," on the other side of the signboard. It was written, "Here begins the divine." The young man was astonished. "What? I did not read that." The fakir smiled and said, "You had the courage to reach the door of truth, but you could not comprehend it." The young man still did not fully understand. He looked at the fakir with questioning eyes. The fakir explained, "This means that when all attachments, illusions, and worldly desires come to an end, only then does one experience the divine. The end of the world is not a physical location, but a state of the mind, where one becomes free from worldly attachments. Only when we rise above this illusion and attachment do we attain the ultimate truth." The young man now understood everything. He realized that truth is not found in an external journey, but in an inward one. Shedding his illusions, he immersed himself in deep self-reflection. If the mind is at peace, the body can never tire. But if the mind is restless, the body will feel exhausted even without doing anything. Our life is in constant motion. From morning till night, we remain engaged in various tasks. But have we ever wondered why we feel tired? Is this exhaustion a sign of physical weakness, or is it an indication of mental imbalance? If we look at the lives of Gautama Buddha and other great saints, we find that despite their immense efforts, they never seemed to tire. What was their secret? We must understand whether fatigue is a curse or a blessing. In today's fast-paced world, imbalance has increased significantly. People stay busy from the moment they wake up until they go to sleep, often neglecting their body's natural needs. Our daily routine lacks exercise, meditation, rest, and self-reflection. This is why we suffer from exhaustion, stress, and irritability. One day, Buddha's disciples asked him, "Lord, you work so hard, yet you never seem to get tired. Why?" Buddha smiled and replied, "I do nothing, so how can I get tired?" The disciples were astonished. They thought, Buddha continuously preaches, travels, and meditates. How can he say he does nothing? It may sound strange, but this is a profound truth. When you start observing yourself as a mere witness, your body may remain active, but your mind stays completely at rest. That is why I never feel tired. Buddha's words are not just for him, but a lesson for everyone. When we approach our activities with the perspective of an observer, our body continues to function, but the mind remains free from burden. If someone works with stress, competition, greed, jealousy, and anxiety, their energy depletes quickly, leading to exhaustion, frustration, and depression. But those who work with balance and mindfulness never get tired. This is the same witness state, Sakshi Bhav, that Buddha taught, natural fatigue. This is a natural process of the body. If someone works hard throughout the day, they need rest at night. This is a healthy form of fatigue. Unnatural fatigue. This type of fatigue arises from an unbalanced lifestyle and mental burdens. It makes a person feel constantly exhausted, irritable, depressed, and unwilling to work. It is a sign of illness. If our enthusiasm, interests, and desires fade, if we become sluggish, irritable, and prone to anger without reason, it is a sign that fatigue has turned into an ailment. If we experience fatigue, we should see it not as a curse but as a blessing. Here are some ways to transform it into a positive force. Yoga and pranayama. Practicing yoga and breathing exercises daily boosts energy and reduces fatigue. Meditation. Meditation calms the mind and relieves stress. It helps develop the witness state, allowing a person to work longer without feeling tired. Balanced lifestyle. Sleeping and waking up at the right time. Eating a balanced diet. Making exercise a part of daily life. The feeling of, I'm doing nothing. Understanding that we are merely instruments, and the real doer is something beyond us. When one realizes that they are just a puppet in the hands of the divine, the mental burden disappears and fatigue vanishes. If we feel exhausted in life, it means there is an imbalance between body and mind. But with proper rest and meditation, fatigue can become a blessing. According to Gautama Buddha, if the mind is at peace, the body can never tire. But if the mind is restless, the body will feel exhausted even without doing anything. So embrace the witness state, maintain balance in life, and see fatigue as an opportunity to gain new energy. This is true wisdom. In the ancient Indian city of Shravasti, there lived a wealthy and charitable man named Siddhartha. However, due to his great deeds, people affectionately called him Anathapindika, which means one who feeds the orphans and the helpless. He earned this name because every day, He arranged for delicious meals at his home, ensuring that any hungry, orphaned, or destitute person who came to him was fed with love and care. His heart was filled with kindness, and he became renowned far and wide for his generosity. At that time, Lord Buddha was staying in Vaishali with his thousands of disciples, preaching the message of dharma and peace. When Anathapindika heard that Lord Buddha had arrived near his city, he was overjoyed. He thought to himself, "I must not let this opportunity slip away. It is a rare fortune to have the chance to meet Lord Buddha." Without any delay, he set out for Vaishali. Upon reaching there, he saw Buddha seated under a tree with his monks. There was a divine glow of peace, compassion, and wisdom on his face. His gentle smile and soothing voice filled the hearts of the people with tranquility. Hundreds of people were attentively listening to his sermons. Anathapindika felt as if his heart was lost in the wisdom of Buddha's words. Once the discourse was over, Anathapindika prostrated before Buddha and said, "Bani, I am a resident of Shravasti. Many people in my city are deprived of your teachings. I humbly request you to visit my city and bless the people there with your divine wisdom." Lord Buddha smiled and said, "My child, this is a noble thought. I shall certainly come. However, we are accompanied by thousands of monks, and we will need a suitable place to stay." Buddha's chief disciple, Mahakasayapa, added, "Anathapindika ji, we are ascetics and cannot stay in a household. If you wish to make arrangements, find a peaceful garden for us to reside in." Anathapindika immediately agreed. "I will make the necessary arrangements as soon as possible." Upon returning to Shravasti, Anathapindika began searching for a suitable place where Buddha and his disciples could stay. After much effort, he found a vast, green, and serene garden located on the outskirts of the city. The garden was truly beautiful. It was filled with lush green trees all around. There was a clear water pond nearby. The atmosphere was completely peaceful, making it an ideal place for meditation and discourses. Anathapindika was delighted with the location. However, this garden belonged to Prince Jita, and it was known as Jetavana. Anathapindika approached Prince Jita and said, "I wish to purchase this garden." Hearing this, Prince Jita was surprised and asked, "Why do you want to buy this garden?" "I'm inviting Lord Buddha and his disciples to my city. I want to offer this place for their residence and religious discourses." Prince Jita, who was not particularly devoted to saints, mockingly set an impossible condition to discourage him. He said, "I will sell you this garden only if you cover the entire land with gold coins." Prince Jita was confident that no one could afford to spend such an enormous amount of gold. However, Anathapindika's devotion to Buddha was unshakable. Without hesitation, he arranged for bullock carts filled with gold coins from his home and began covering the entire garden with them. The people of the city were astonished when they heard about this. Some even said, "This man has gone mad. He is throwing away his entire fortune for a monk." But Anathapindika was undeterred by such remarks. He continued placing gold coins over the entire land. When Prince Jita saw this, he was completely stunned. He was deeply moved by Anathapindika's unwavering devotion and generosity. With tears in his eyes, he said, "Anathapindika ji, I had only placed this condition as a joke, but you have truly sacrificed all your wealth. I can no longer sell this land to you." Anathapindika smiled and replied, "Prince, I have given my word, and I do not go back on my promises. This garden no longer belongs to you." Hearing this, Prince Jita felt immense remorse. Overwhelmed with emotion, he fell at Buddha's feet and said, "Now I understand that the company of enlightened beings and spiritual wisdom is far more valuable than wealth. I, too, wish to dedicate my life to the path of dharma." Thus, Prince Jita willingly donated the garden for Buddha and his disciples. This is how Jetavana Monastery was established, which later became one of the most significant centers of Buddhism. Lord Buddha resided here for many years and enlightened countless people with his teachings on dharma, truth, and compassion. Anathapindika's selfless donation is regarded as one of the greatest acts of charity in history. True wealth lies not in possessions, but in righteousness and compassion. The value of spiritual wisdom and the company of enlightened beings is priceless. Unwavering faith and devotion can make the impossible possible. One must rise above greed and ego to walk the path of dharma. Even today, the name Anathapindika is immortalized in history as a symbol of pure devotion and selfless service. In ancient times, the city of Vaishali was renowned for its prosperity, beauty, and luxury. Its grand palaces, bustling markets, and magnificent festivals were famous far and wide. In this splendid city lived Vasavadatta, an exceptionally beautiful and charming courtesan. She was so enchanting that even the wealthiest and most influential men longed for her love, but she never gave her heart to anyone. One day, a disciple of Lord Buddha arrived in the city to seek alms. This young monk was strong, radiant, and incredibly charismatic. His eyes reflected divine peace, and his face glowed with wisdom and serenity. He was not only physically attractive, but also possessed a profound spiritual beauty. According to the rules of alms seeking, a monk was allowed to request alms from only 3 houses. As fate would have it, when he stopped at the first house and said, "Bhiksham Dehi, give me alms," it happened to be the house of Vasavadatta. When Vasavadatta stepped out, she saw this extraordinary and luminous monk standing at her door. Her soul felt captivated by his presence. A woman who had always been the center of attraction in the city, for the first time, found herself drawn to a man with an intense, deep longing. With a sweet and inviting voice, Vasavadatta said, "Monk, please come inside and stay for a while." With great humility and detachment, the monk replied, "Lady, I cannot come inside right now." Smiling charmingly, Vasavadatta insisted, "Monks never refuse an invitation. If someone calls you, you must go. If you step inside, you will surely gain something." But the monk responded politely, "If you wish to give something, please offer it here at the door." Vasavadatta stood stunned. For the first time, a man had refused her. The monk's indifference and self-restraint made her even more captivated by him. She gazed at him in awe, but after a few moments, the monk turned and walked away. From that moment on, Vasavadatta's soul was restless. She felt the burning pain of longing. The whole day, she could think of nothing but that monk. Gradually, she stopped dancing, abandoned music, and withdrew from social gatherings. The woman who once laughed and sang all day long now became completely silent. Wealthy and powerful men still came to invite her to their grand celebrations, but she refused them all. Solitude became her new way of life. Due to constant distress and longing, her body grew weak and frail. She fell ill, and slowly her beauty faded. No one came to see her anymore. Day and night, Vasavadatta thought of the monk. The flames of unfulfilled love burned inside her, gradually consuming her from within. Her body developed sores, and she became so weak that she could not even get out of bed. Sometime later, the same monk returned to Vaishali. When he learned that Vasavadatta was critically ill, he went to her house. The maid rushed to Vasavadatta and said, "Lady, the same monk has come, the one for whom you have suffered so much." With a feeble voice, Vasavadatta replied, No. When I was beautiful, he rejected me. Now that I am ugly and sick, how can I show my face to him?" But the monk entered her chamber and said with deep compassion, "O lady, when you were happy, admirers surrounded you. But in your time of suffering, they have all abandoned you. Worry not, feel no shame. I will stay with you and take care of you." With his pure heart and kindness, the monk nursed Vasavadatta back to health. He made her experience divine love and true peace. Gradually, her mind became purified. Her worldly desires faded, and she realized that earthly love is fleeting, but spiritual love is eternal. The monk decided to take Vasavadatta to Lord Buddha. He brought her to Shravasti, where Buddha was staying at that time. Falling at Buddha's feet, Vasavadatta prayed, "O Tathagata, please grant me ordination. I want to purify my life and follow the path of righteousness." Buddha looked at her with deep compassion and said, "Vasavadatta, let go of your past. What is gone is gone. Your rebirth lies in your own hands. Walk on the path of wisdom and compassion." Thus, Vasavadatta was ordained as a nun and devoted her life to meditation, service, and self-realization. Lessons from Vasavadatta's story. True love is beyond physical beauty. Love is not based on external beauty, but on the purity of the soul. Worldly love is temporary, but spiritual love is eternal. Earthly attachments fade away, but the love of truth and wisdom lasts forever. True service leads to inner purification. Love and care should not be driven by desire, but by selfless compassion. The greatest transformation comes from self-realization. A true change in life begins with awareness and commitment to a higher purpose. Vasavadata's story teaches us that seeking truth and wisdom is far greater than wandering in the illusions of worldly love. Instead of losing ourselves in temporary pleasures, we should walk the path of enlightenment and self-discovery. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a saint named Sadguru Vasudeva. He was extremely wise, kind, and full of love. His discourses deeply inspired the villagers. He always spoke about truth, righteousness, nonviolence, and self-realization, encouraging people to follow the right path in life. Every day, hundreds of people came to his ashram, seeking solutions to their problems and relief from their sorrows. But Sadhguru always gave them the same advice: purify your mind, follow the path of truth, and elevate your thoughts. Only then will your life be successful. Some of the teachings of Sadhguru are as follows. In the village, there was a young man named Arjun, who was constantly anxious and troubled. He tried hard to earn wealth, but he never found satisfaction. He had money, but no peace. One day, he approached Sadhguru and asked, "Gurudev, I am very unhappy. I have money, but no happiness. My mind is never at peace. Please show me the way." Sadhguru Vasudeva smiled and said, "My son, the key to happiness is knowledge, not money. Money is just a tool, but if you lack compassion, love, and kindness in your heart, true happiness will never come to you." Arjun was taken aback. He asked again, "Gurudev, but I always remain anxious. What should I do?" Sadhguru gently said, "Instead of worrying, take action. If your mind is filled with negative thoughts, worry will persist. The mind feeds on thoughts. Nourish it with good ones, and it will become your friend." Arjun bowed his head in realization. He understood that he had been chasing money but had forgotten the importance of good thoughts and true wisdom. In the same village, there was another young man named Vikram. He was intelligent but had fallen into bad company. Due to this, he became addicted to gambling, drinking, and started misbehaving with his parents. One day, his mother took him to Sadhguru, crying, "Gurudev, my son has fallen into bad company. Please show him the right path." Sadhguru looked at Vikram and said, "My son, bad company poisons both the body and the mind. If you truly seek happiness, surround yourself with wise and virtuous people. Only then will your mind find peace." Vikram was shocked to hear this. He realized that the people he had been associating with were leading him toward destruction. At that very moment, he fell at the feet of the Guru, seeking forgiveness, and vowed to change his life by choosing the right company. One day, a monk came to Sadhguru and said, "Gurudev, I have renounced my home, abandoned my family, and gone to the forest, yet I have not found peace. Am I on the right path?" Sadhguru smiled and said, "My son, renunciation does not mean merely leaving your home. It means understanding the truth of life. If your mind is still filled with attachment and ego, you will not find peace even in the forest. True renunciation is about realizing the truth and living by it." The monk realized that although he had become a monk externally, he was still holding on to ego and attachments in his heart. He fell at the Guru's feet and said, "Now I understand true renunciation. From this moment, I will let go of my ego and attachments and follow the path of truth." There was a merchant in the village named Dharmadas. He was very religious but always felt that engaging in business would not help him attain spiritual growth. One day he asked Sadhguru, "Gurudev, I want to become a monk, but I have a family and a business. What should I do?" Sadhguru laughed and said, "My son, live in the world, but do not let the world live within you. If you attach yourself too much to worldly things, you will be trapped. If you conduct your business with honesty and do not harm anyone, you can be just as great as a monk." Hearing this, Dharmadas felt great relief. He realized that one does not need to abandon the world to be spiritual. True spirituality lies in purity of heart and honesty in actions. In the same village, there was a farmer named Ramlal. He was very hardworking, but always unhappy. He constantly complained, saying, "I have so many hardships in life. No one helps me. God does not listen to my prayers." One day, he went to Sadhguru and said, "Gurudev, I am very troubled. Can you give me a solution?" Sadhguru calmly said, "If you seek happiness in this world, Do not demand things forcefully or unjustly. If you truly want to be happy, develop patience. If you are patient, no suffering can shake you. For the first time, Ramlal realized that his real problem was that he was constantly asking from God but never trying to change himself. From that day, he started practicing patience and focusing on his own efforts. Gradually, his life became peaceful and joyful. Sadhguru's teachings for a happy life: the key to happiness is knowledge, not money. Stay away from bad company and surround yourself with good thoughts. True renunciation is understanding the truth of life, not just leaving the home. Live in the world, but do not let the world control your mind. Patience is the greatest strength. If we apply these teachings in our lives, we can live a successful and peaceful life. True wealth is knowledge, and true righteousness is the right path. In ancient times, Mahatma Buddha lived in a peaceful and beautiful forest with his disciples, where they had established an ashram. People from distant places would come to seek answers to their questions and find solutions to their life's problems. His wisdom and compassion were renowned in all directions. One day, a man came to Buddha. He was well educated, had studied numerous scriptures, and understood the truths of life, yet he remained restless. Bowing before Buddha, he said, "Gurudev, I have complete knowledge of life's truth, yet my mind does not stay focused on any task. This instability troubles me greatly. Please help me and tell me the reason behind it." Mahatma Buddha looked at the man calmly and smiling said, "My son, I will certainly give you the answer, but first, you must wait until nightfall." The man gladly agreed and stayed at the ashram. Night arrived. The moon bathed the entire forest in its cool light, and the atmosphere was incredibly serene and mesmerizing. Mahatma Buddha asked the man to accompany him. They both walked to a beautiful lake near the ashram. The lake's water was still, and the reflection of the moon was clearly visible on its surface. Pointing towards the lake, Buddha said, "Look at this lake. See how beautifully and clearly the moon is reflected in it." The man gazed at the lake, mesmerized by the beauty of the moon's reflection. Just then, Buddha picked up a small stone and dropped it into the water. As soon as the stone touched the surface, ripples formed, and the moon's reflection began to waver. Buddha then asked, "My son, tell me, is the moon stable or unstable now?" The man replied, "Gurudev, the reflection has become disturbed due to the ripples, but the real moon in the sky remains stable." Buddha smiled and said, "My son, your mind is like this lake. You have acquired knowledge, but you have not tried to apply it in your life. You have merely stored it in your mind, just as the lake holds the moon's reflection. However, when even the smallest problem arises, your mind becomes unstable, just as the lake's reflection is disturbed by a small stone." The man listened intently. Buddha continued, "Knowledge that is not applied in conduct and behavior is merely an illusion, just like the reflection of the moon in the lake. This reflection is not the real moon, and it can be shattered by ripples at any moment. Similarly, if your knowledge is confined only to books and thoughts, it cannot bring stability and balance to your life. You must integrate your knowledge into your daily life. You must become like the moon in the sky, stable, unwavering, and resolute. You must discipline and focus your mind. When your knowledge is transformed into action, your mind will become peaceful and will no longer waver in any situation." The man's eyes lit up. He realized his mistake. He had been focused only on accumulating knowledge but had never tried to implement it in his life. This was the reason his mind remained restless. With deep reverence and devotion, he bowed to Buddha's feet and said, "Gurudev, today you have given me true wisdom. From now on, I will not limit myself to acquiring knowledge, but will strive to apply it in my life. I will practice to make my mind steady and firm." Buddha, pleased, blessed him and said, "True knowledge is that which manifests in behavior and brings us peace and stability. Go forth and transform your knowledge into action to make your life meaningful." From that day on, the man changed completely. His mind no longer wavered as before. He performed every task with complete concentration and self-discipline. Peace and contentment filled his life. Moral of the story: knowledge is meaningful only when it is applied in practice. The mind becomes stable when there is harmony between knowledge and action. One who merely accumulates knowledge but does not apply it finds no true benefit in it. We should not be deceived by the illusion of the moon's reflection in the lake, but strive to attain the stability of the moon in the sky. Discipline, concentration, and practice are essential for stabilizing the mind. A truly wise person is one who internalizes knowledge and makes it meaningful through action. Gautama Buddha dedicated his entire life to the path of truth, compassion, and the welfare of humanity. He renounced royal luxuries and adopted a life of asceticism to enlighten people about the reality of existence. Buddha did not merely preach. His life itself was a living example of simplicity, equality, and sacrifice. He conveyed his teachings through simple stories and parables, making his words deeply resonate with people's hearts. One day, as Buddha was traveling with his disciples, a wealthy merchant approached him. The merchant had great reverence for Buddha's teachings and wished for him to visit his home and accept alms. With utmost humility, the merchant requested, "Bhagwan, please accept my invitation and grace my home so that I may earn some merit." Seeing the merchant's devotion, Buddha accepted his request. Upon hearing the news of Buddha's visit, the merchant made special arrangements for the almsgiving. He instructed his cooks to prepare a rich and delicious rice pudding, kheer, with dry fruits to please the enlightened one. Today, Lord Buddha will visit our home. We must offer him the finest alms. The merchant and his family thoroughly cleaned their home. The courtyard was smeared with fresh cow dung, decorated with flowers, and a special seat was arranged for Buddha. At the appointed time, Gautama Buddha arrived at the merchant's home with his disciples. The merchant greeted him with great reverence and eagerly prepared to offer the rice pudding with his own hands. Buddha extended his alms bowl, kamandelu, forward and said, "Merchant, please pour the pudding into this bowl." As soon as the merchant looked inside the alms bowl, he was taken aback. The bowl was filled with filth and cow dung. Startled, the merchant said, "Bhagwan, this bowl is impure. How can I pour this sacred offering into it? It must first be cleansed." Buddha calmly replied, "Then, merchant, cleanse this bowl first." The merchant quickly washed the alms bowl, purified it with clean water, and then poured the rich and flavorful rice pudding into it. Buddha looked at him and delivered a profound teaching. "Merchant, if you could not accept placing pure food in an impure vessel, how can one store the blessings of virtue and religion in an impure heart?" The merchant fell into deep contemplation. Buddha continued, "If you believe that food should only be kept in a clean container, then it is even more essential that virtuous deeds be stored in a pure and untainted heart. If the mind is filled with jealousy, anger, greed, arrogance, and deceit, then acts of charity, fasting, pilgrimages, and religious rituals become mere external displays." The merchant stood speechless. Realizing his mistake, he humbly bowed his head and said, "Bhagwan, your words have opened my eyes. I now understand that true religion lies not in mere outward rituals, but in the purification of the heart. I resolve from today onwards to keep my inner self as pure as my outer actions." Buddha blessed him with contentment and continued his journey. Moral teachings from the story. Inner purity is the foundation of true religion. If the mind is filled with hatred, greed, pride, and selfishness, then religious practices hold no real value. Internal cleanliness is more important than external display. Religion and virtue are meaningful only when performed with a pure heart and sincere intentions. Just as fine food is stored in a clean vessel, true spirituality thrives in a pure mind. If the heart is tainted, then acts of charity, pilgrimages, and religious rituals remain mere formalities. True religion is not about external rituals, but about inner transformation. Just as food becomes impure in a dirty vessel, religious deeds lose their significance if the heart is filled with impurities. This enlightening story from Gautama Buddha teaches us that the true realization of religion does not come from external rites, but from the purity and sincerity of the heart. If we genuinely wish to attain virtue and spirituality, we must cleanse our inner selves, freeing them from greed, attachment, and ego. There was a time in ancient history. In a dense forest, Mahatma Buddha lived with his disciples in an ashram. Many seekers came there in search of meditation, spiritual practice, and the truth, surrounded by the lap of nature. Buddha's words carry deep peace and immense wisdom. He explained the profound mysteries of life to his followers in simple words. One day, a curious young man came to Buddha. He was a scholar, well-versed in many scriptures and texts, yet his mind was filled with unanswered questions. Sitting at Buddha's feet, he said, "Buddha, I have studied extensively to understand life and truth, but still, my mind is not at peace. Please tell me, what is the ultimate truth? What is the soul? And what is the reality of this world?" Mahatma Buddha looked at the young man, noticing the curiosity and restlessness in his eyes. With kindness, he said, "My son, truth is not an external object that can be understood merely by reading or listening. Truth must be experienced. Listen carefully, I will tell you some important things. Try to imbibe them in your life." Pointing to a nearby lake, Buddha continued, "Look, when you see a dream at night, it feels completely real. You laugh, cry, feel fear or happiness. But when you wake up, you realize it was just an illusion. In the same way, this world is also a dream. It appears real only as long as you remain asleep in the slumber of ignorance. When the eyes of self-realization open, the world is seen in its true form." Buddha then lit a lamp and asked the young man, "Does this lamp need another light to illuminate itself?" The young man replied, "No, Gurudev. This lamp is self-illuminating." Buddha smiled and said, "Similarly, the soul is self-illuminating knowledge. As long as it is covered by the veil of ignorance, it appears limited and weak. But when the darkness of ignorance disappears, the soul shines in its true essence." The young man asked, "Gurudev, people go on pilgrimages and bathe in sacred rivers. Will this lead them to liberation?" Buddha replied, "My son, the greatest pilgrimage is not outside. It is within your own mind. When the mind becomes pure, it itself becomes the gateway to liberation. External pilgrimages are only beneficial when the mind is also filled with purity and devotion." Looking deep into the young man's eyes, Buddha continued, "When a person truly desires to know the truth, the world starts to seem meaningless. The one who sets out in search of truth does not get entangled in the illusions of the world, but moves forward towards self-realization." Buddha then explained, "Every person must understand that the soul is like a king, while the body, senses, mind, and intellect are its servants. The soul is beyond all of them and remains only a witness. One who realizes this truth can never live in ignorance again." Buddha said, "The sun always exists in the sky, but sometimes clouds cover it. Does that mean the sun is gone? No. As soon as the clouds disappear, the sun shines again. Similarly, ignorance limits the soul. But when the light of knowledge comes, the soul's true nature is revealed." Buddha continued, "As long as you do not realize the truth, reading religious scriptures is of no real use. And once you understand the truth, there is no need to read scriptures anymore. More than reading about truth, experiencing it is essential." Smiling, Buddha said, "As long as you keep chasing happiness, it will keep running away from you. But the moment you stop searching outside and look within, true joy will reveal itself." The young man asked, "Gurudev, why do people love their close ones so much, yet after death, everyone moves away?" Buddha replied, "Worldly love is attached only to the body. As long as breath remains, people remember you. But as soon as life departs, even the closest relatives walk away. This is the reality of the world." Buddha then said, "Self-discipline means restraining your eyes, senses, and mind from wandering. The one who practices self-discipline becomes free from worldly attachments and attains true bliss." Buddha continued, "Truth is not confined to any language. Language is a creation of humans, but truth is complete in itself. Truth does not need validation, it only needs to be experienced." Finally, Buddha said, "Truth is that which was, is, and will always be. Truth does not change with time because truth is eternal and unchanging." The young man listened to all this, and tears flowed from his eyes. He bowed before Buddha with deep reverence and said, "Gurudev, today I have found the path to self-realization. From now on, I will dedicate my life to the pursuit of truth." Buddha blessed him and said, "My son, merely knowing the truth is not enough. You must strive to live it. Do not just listen to the truth, embody it in your life." From that day on, the young man became a disciple of Buddha and devoted himself to the search for truth. Moral of the story: the world is an illusion. Self-realization is the true awakening. The soul is self-illuminating. It does not need external knowledge to shine. Pilgrimage is not outside. The purification of the mind is the greatest pilgrimage. Knowing the Mahatma Buddha lived in solitude in his hut near the riverbank. His small dwelling was surrounded by lush green trees, where birds chirped melodiously every morning and evening. This serene natural environment brought immense peace and joy to Buddha. For him, the birds, trees, and all of nature had become his family. One day, as Buddha had just woken up in the early morning, he saw a wealthy man standing at his door. The man looked extrememely anxious and troubled. With kindness, Buddha called him closer and inquired about his problem. Folding his hands, the merchant said, I have immense wealth, a prosperous family, and good health. Yet I cannot sleep at night. As soon as I try to sleep, my mind is filled with strange thoughts. Worries haunt me, and I spend the entire night tossing and turning. Please help me find a solution to my problem. Mahatma Buddha gently placed his hand on the merchant's head, smiled, and said, Seth, you may have everything, but you lack the one thing that is essential for a peaceful sleep. The merchant, surprised, asked Gurudev, what is that thing that I do not have? In a calm voice, Buddha replied, that thing is freedom from worry. You are surrounded by worries from all sides. You worry about your wealth, your business, your family, and your future. Remember, worry and peace are enemies. Where there is worry, there cannot be peace. The merchant asked Gurudev, but how can I get rid of my worries? Without worrying, how can I run my business or take care of my family? Please show me a way out of this problem. Buddha smiled and said, Seth, the simplest way to be free from worry is learn from nature. The merchant, puzzled, asked, from nature? How can I learn from it? Buddha explained, look at these trees, bearing countless leaves and flowers on their branches. Do they ever worry about what will happen tomorrow? No. The sun spreads its light across the world. The moon soothes hearts with its coolness, and the river quenches the thirst of the needy with its pure waters. Yet none of them ever worry about running out of their resources. The merchant listened attentively to Buddha's words. Buddha continued, Seth, these trees, these flowers, this water, and this light, they all generously share their infinite wealth with the world, without any hesitation or fear. Yet they never worry. But you, on the other hand, are constantly busy accumulating wealth, hesitant to share it with others, and that is why worry never leaves your side. If you take inspiration from nature and make your life just as pure, generous, and charitable, you will not only sleep peacefully, but also attain immense inner peace. Buddha's words opened the merchant's eyes. He realized that his real problem was not a lack of wealth, but his unwillingness to share it and his habit of hoarding. With deep reverence, the merchant bowed at Buddha's feet and said, Today, I have received the greatest lesson of my life. From now on, I will use my wealth wisely and dedicate it to charity and the welfare of others. From that day onward, the merchant started helping the needy. He opened food shelters for the poor, arranged medicines for the sick, and built schools for education. Gradually, he freed himself from greed and worry, and as a result, he was finally able to sleep peacefully at night. Moral of the story, worry and peace cannot coexist. Even with wealth, family, and success, a person remains restless if they are driven by greed and accumulation. The true joy of wealth lies in sharing it with others. Nature teaches us that giving never leads to emptiness. Rather, true prosperity comes from generosity. If we embrace charity, generosity, and service, we attain mental peace and true happiness. The real joy of wealth lies in giving, not just in hoarding. Lord Buddha always taught his disciples to follow morality, compassion, and right perception. All his disciples made sincere efforts to embody these virtues in their conduct. The monks and the Buddhist Sangha carefully observed each other's behavior to ensure that no one violated the discipline. If someone made a mistake, another would immediately correct them. According to Buddha, the essence of religion was not just about following rules, but also about making the right decisions at the right time and practicing compassion. One day, two of Buddha's senior disciples were traveling from Nalanda to Pataliputra, where Buddha was staying at a monastery. Their journey was long, and after walking all day, they were exhausted. At noon, they saw a river and thought of drinking water and resting for a while. As they sat by the riverbank, they noticed a woman struggling in the water, drowning. She was desperately trying to save herself, but her strength was fading. Upon witnessing this, the first monk said, "We must follow the rules of our faith. Touching a woman is forbidden for us, so we should not intervene." However, the second monk thought to himself, "Is the sole purpose of religion just to follow rules? If I watch someone die and do nothing to help, wouldn't that be an even greater sin?" Without hesitation, he immediately jumped into the river. Bravely, he lifted the drowning woman onto his shoulders and carried her safely to the shore. The woman was now safe. After saving her, both monks resumed their journey. However, throughout the journey, the first monk kept criticizing the second monk. He said, You have violated the rules of Buddhism. Touching a woman is strictly forbidden for us, yet you carried her on your shoulders. This is a grave sin. The second monk remained silent and listened patiently, but did not respond. After 6 hours of walking, they finally reached Buddha. The first monk immediately complained to Buddha. Bani, I tried to explain to him many times, but he still touched a woman, committing a great sin. This is against our religious principles. Buddha patiently listened to the whole story and then calmly asked, My son, how long did it take him to save the woman? The monk replied, About 15 minutes. Buddha then asked, And how long did it take for both of you to reach here? The monk answered, 6 hours. Now Buddha smiled and said, He carried that woman on his shoulders for only 15 minutes, but you've been carrying her in your mind for 6 hours. Now tell me, who among you is the greater sinner? The first monk realized his mistake and lowered his head in shame. Moral of the story. Heavy checkmark righteousness is not just about following rules. It is also about making the right decisions at the right time. Heavy checkmark, the true purpose of religion is compassion and kindness, not rigid discipline. Heavy checkmark, a person who constantly holds onto others' mistakes carries the burden of hatred and ego within themselves. Heavy checkmark, true religion is one that teaches us humanity and love. Buddha taught that following religious principles is not just about external adherence to rules, but about internal purity and righteous actions. If following a rule leads to someone's death, then that is not righteousness but unrighteousness. Therefore, we must always practice compassion, wisdom, and an open mind. This is a tale from ancient times. In a city, there lived a man who was extremely inquisitive and contemplative. His mind was always occupied with questions about life and death, the soul and creation, God and heaven and hell. He remained deeply engrossed in these thoughts and was troubled because he could not find satisfactory answers from anyone. He sought answers from many scholars, ascetics, and philosophers, but none could satisfy his curiosity. Eventually, he learned that Shramana Gautama Buddha was staying in a nearby forest, where many people came daily to seek solutions to their questions. He thought, if anyone can explain these profound mysteries, it must be Buddha. With this thought, he set off to meet him. When he arrived at Buddha's place, he saw that many people were gathered around him. They had come with various concerns. Some sought relief from suffering, some desired peace of mind, some were troubled by relationships, and some were searching for truth and religion. Buddha, with utmost patience and simplicity, answered all their questions. He neither grew weary nor ignored anyone. He listened attentively to everyone and provided solutions in simple language. The man was astonished to see this. He thought, what does Buddha have to do with these worldly matters? He is an enlightened and self-realized being. Why does he bother himself with such trivial concerns? Instead of wasting time on these people's worries, he should remain immersed in meditation and spiritual practice. As soon as this thought crossed his mind, he could not restrain himself and directly asked Buddha, Master, what do you have to do with these worldly matters? A truly enlightened one like you should remain detached from these worldly entanglements and focus only on your own liberation and meditation. Why are you wasting so much time? Buddha smiled gently and with great patience replied, I am not a supreme knower. I am just an ordinary human who has seen and experienced the sufferings of the world. The man was taken aback. He wondered why a great figure like Buddha would say that he was not a supreme knower. Before he could ask further, Buddha continued, True knowledge is not that which is kept only for oneself. True knowledge is that which serves others. If my knowledge makes me self-centered and arrogant, if I start considering myself superior and ignore the suffering of others, then what is the use of such knowledge? Such knowledge is worse than ignorance itself. Buddha then gave an example. Imagine a man has successfully crossed a river and sees many others struggling at the shore, on the verge of drowning. Now, if he says, I have crossed the river, the rest should take care of themselves. Would that be right? No, a truly wise person is one who helps others cross the river as well, who shows them the right path and tries to reduce their suffering. Hearing Buddha's words, the man's eyes were opened. He realized that the purpose of knowledge is not just personal salvation, but also the welfare of others. After listening to Buddha, all his doubts disappeared. He had found the answers to his questions. He understood that true knowledge is not meant to be hoarded but shared for the benefit of all. From that day on, the man's mindset and behavior changed completely. He was no longer someone who cared only about his own salvation. Instead, he started using his knowledge to help others and guide them towards the right path. Moral of the story is, knowledge is meaningful only when it is used for the welfare of society. Being self-centered after attaining knowledge is not true wisdom. A truly wise person is one who helps others with their knowledge. Selfish knowledge, which disregards others, can be even more harmful than ignorance. Intelligence and wisdom hold true value only when used for the betterment of society. Buddha's words teach us that the true purpose of life is not just personal liberation, but also contributing to the eradication of ignorance, suffering, and pain from society. This is the highest form of wisdom. Emperor Bindusara, the great Mauryan ruler, was the son of the legendary Emperor Chandragupta Maurya. During his reign, he strengthened and enriched the Mauryan Empire. He was a just and visionary ruler. However, as he grew older, he began to worry about his successor. He had many sons, but he did not want to pass the throne merely based on tradition by choosing the eldest son. Bindusara wished for a successor who was truly capable, not only in strength and governance, but also in wisdom, righteousness, and service. He decided that all the princes would undergo a test, and the one who proved to be the most deserving would be declared the next emperor. His family and ministers supported this decision. For this crucial task, Emperor Bindusara chose Mahatma Pingala Vatsajeev, a scholar renowned for his wisdom, foresight, and sense of justice. He firmly believed that a king's qualities should not be limited to warfare or administration alone, but must also include compassion, justice, and a spirit of service. Mahatma Pingala Vatsajeev set a specific day and summoned all the princes, instructing them to come well prepared to demonstrate their knowledge and capabilities. On the appointed day, all the princes arrived in grand attire, adorned with fine clothes and ornaments. Their faces reflected royal pride, and they were eager to prove their worthiness and right to the throne. However, Ashoka was the only one who arrived in simple attire. He did not wear any special jewelry or royal garments. He appeared in his natural, humble, and modest form. Mahatma Pingala Vatsajeev called each prince individually and asked them the same question. "What have you studied and learned?" The other princes proudly presented their answers. Some claimed to have specialized in politics and diplomacy, while others boasted of their mastery in warfare. Some spoke of their expertise in administration, while others highlighted their generosity and royal virtues. But when it was Ashoka's turn, he responded with great humility. "Revered one, I have studied and learned many things, but the essence I have realized is that serving the poor and respecting elders is our foremost duty. I have decided to always uphold this dharma. This is the purpose of my life." Hearing Ashoka's answer, Mahatma Pingala Vatsajeev was extremely pleased. He immediately announced that Ashoka would be Emperor Bindusara's successor. The other princes were astonished. They wondered why they were not chosen despite showcasing multiple qualifications. Addressing everyone, Mahatma Pingala Vatsajeev explained, "To be a king, knowledge of warfare or administration alone is not enough. A true king must have a large heart. He must possess a spirit of service, compassion, and responsibility towards his people. What Ashoka has expressed is the true duty of a king. He will prioritize the welfare of his people and rule with justice and service. That is why he is the most deserving successor." Emperor Bindusara also found this decision appropriate and declared Ashoka as his heir. When Ashoka became the emperor, he proved Mahatma Pingala Vatsajeev's decision to be right. During his reign, he carried out great works, launched numerous welfare programs for his people, and understanding the horrors of war, adopted the path of nonviolence. The immense bloodshed in the Kalinga War deeply shook his heart. He resolved never to wage war again and dedicated his life to the service of humanity. After this, he embraced Buddhism and faithfully followed the teachings of Buddha. He became a monk and devoted his life to truth, nonviolence, and service. He sent emissaries far and wide to spread Buddhism across the world. Moral of the story: true leadership is not attained through strength and knowledge alone, but through compassion and service. A great ruler is one who considers his people as his family and works for their welfare. True education is that which teaches a person righteousness, humility, and a spirit of service. Worthiness is not judged by outward display, but by inner values and morality. Arrogance renders knowledge useless, while humility makes it meaningful. A truly educated person is one who applies his knowledge in his conduct and uses it to serve humanity. In a village of Shravasti, a man came to Lord Buddha. His eyes were filled with tears, his face was burdened with grief, and his body was weakened by exhaustion. In a sorrowful voice, he said, "Buddha, I had only one son, and he has suddenly passed away. I loved him dearly. Now I can neither sleep properly nor eat. My life is stuck in the hope that somehow my son might return." Lord Buddha listened to his suffering with deep compassion. Then, in a gentle voice, he said, "Dear one, the root of your suffering is your excessive attachment to your son. It is this attachment that is causing you pain." As soon as the man heard Buddha's words, he disagreed and, in an agitated tone, said, "Gurudev, you are mistaken. Attachment does not cause suffering. Rather, it is the very source of happiness and joy. When my son was alive, I was extremely happy. Love and attachment make life worth living. How can you say that attachment leads to suffering? This cannot be true." Saying this, the man walked away. His words became a topic of public discussion. People began debating Buddha's teachings. The discussion soon reached King Prasenajit. The king also heard that Buddha had said, "Attachment leads to suffering." The king did not agree with this idea. He shared his thoughts with his queen, saying Buddha's statement seems incorrect. Love and attachment bring happiness, not suffering. The queen, however, understood the depth of Buddha's wisdom. She knew that his words were true, but the king needed to realize it for himself. Looking at the king, she spoke in a soft voice, "Maharaj, let me tell you two incidents that recently took place in Shravasti. The first incident is about a woman whose mother passed away a few days ago. She loved her mother immensely. Her mother was her whole world. When her mother died, she was devastated. She cried endlessly, lost her senses, and eventually fell into deep depression. The second incident is about two lovers. They were deeply in love with each other, but the girl's family arranged her marriage with someone else. Unable to bear the pain of separation, both took their own lives. The queen looked at the king and asked, "Maharaj, what was the cause of suffering in both these cases?" The king solemnly replied, "Attachment and love were the reasons behind their suffering." The queen continued, "Maharaj, do you love your daughter, the princess?" The king replied, "Of course. I love my daughter dearly." The queen then asked, "If something unfortunate were to happen to the princess, would it not cause you pain?" The king's face turned serious. He remained silent for a few moments and then said, "Yes, I would be deeply saddened." Smiling gently, the queen said, "Maharaj, this is exactly what Buddha meant. As long as our loved ones are with us, love and attachment bring happiness. But when they are taken away or suffer pain, the same love and attachment turn into unbearable suffering. That is why Buddha said that attachment leads to suffering." Now, the king finally understood the true meaning of Buddha's words. He accepted that Buddha's teaching was completely true. Lessons from Buddha's teaching, attachment and love bring happiness, but when circumstances change, they also become the cause of suffering. When we become excessively attached to a person, object, or emotion, its absence brings sorrow and grief into our lives. Love must be balanced with wisdom. Only a well-balanced love and attachment can bring true peace of mind. Buddha's message teaches us that love is essential in life, but it should not turn into obsession. Love deeply, but do not be enslaved by attachment. Only then can true peace and contentment be achieved in life. A long time ago, a young man set out on a journey to discover the truth of life. He wandered far and wide in search of knowledge and wisdom. One day, he was passing through a dense forest. The forest was quiet, but he had no idea of the hidden dangers lurking within. As he took a few steps forward, he suddenly saw a huge and terrifying lion standing in front of him. The lion's roar sent shivers down his spine, and his heart began to race. Terrified, he turned around and ran in the opposite direction. The lion, using its full strength, started chasing him. The young man knew that if he stopped, the lion would not spare his life. As he ran, he reached the edge of a deep ravine. He could neither move forward nor turn back, as doing so meant certain death at the jaws of the lion. Just then, he noticed a strong vine hanging over the ravine. He thought that if he held onto the vine and climbed down, he might find a way to escape. Without a second thought, he grabbed the vine and hung over the ravine. The lion stood above, growling in frustration, eager to devour him. The young man sighed in relief, believing he had found a way to save himself. But as he looked down, his breath caught in his throat once again. Below, at the bottom of the ravine, a massive python lay, waiting with its mouth wide open, ready to swallow him the moment he fell. Now he was stuck. He could neither climb up nor go down. He was trapped in a dilemma, unsure of what to do next. At that moment, his eyes fell on the vine he was clinging to. He noticed two small mice, one white and one black, slowly gnawing away at the vine. Seeing this, his fear intensified. He realized that time was running out. His situation had become extremely critical. Above him was the lion, below him was a python, and the vine he was holding onto was being cut by the mice. He thought to himself that his life was now just a matter of moments. But just then, his eyes caught sight of a small red fruit hanging from the vine. It looked ripe and juicy, much like a cherry. The young man plucked the fruit and placed it in his mouth. As soon as the sweet juice touched his tongue, he smiled and said, "Wow, what a sweet and delightful fruit." This story carries a profound lesson about life. The lion represents our past karma, which constantly chases us and affects our present. The python symbolizes the uncertainty of the future, old age, and death, which are inevitable and inescapable. The hanging vine represents our present life, in which we are currently living. The white and black mice symbolize day and night, which continuously nibble away at our lifespan, bringing us closer to the end. The small red fruit represents worldly pleasures, which we enjoy despite their temporary and illusory nature. Humans spend their lives entangled in worries about the past and the future. Neither can they change the past, nor can they control the future. Yet, they remain attached to fleeting pleasures and forget their true purpose. Through this story, Zen philosophy teaches us that we should neither fear our past nor be consumed by worries about the future. Instead, we should focus on improving our present. The person who learns to see life from this perspective attains true peace and happiness. Gautama Buddha was deeply immersed in meditation and spiritual practice with his disciples in a peaceful forest. His wisdom, patience, and compassion were renowned far and wide. Every day, new seekers would come to him, eager to understand the deeper mysteries of life. One afternoon, while Buddha was meditating in his ashram, one of his disciples rushed toward him in a state of distress and anger. His breathing was heavy, and his face was red with rage. In an agitated tone, he said, "Buddha, the landlord, Ram Singh, has insulted me. Not only did he speak ill of me, but he also spoke disrespectfully about you. We must go there immediately and teach him a lesson." Buddha opened his eyes and in a calm voice asked, "My son, do you truly believe that a true follower of Buddhism can be insulted?" The disciple replied, "Gurudev, when someone speaks badly of us, is it not an insult?" Buddha gently explained, "An insult only affects you if you accept it. If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to take it, the gift remains with them. In the same way, when someone speaks ill of you and you do not let it settle in your mind, those words remain with them and do not affect you." The disciple remained silent for a moment, but his anger had not yet subsided. He insisted, "Gurudev, please come with me. When he sees you, he will surely feel ashamed and apologize. That will bring me peace." Buddha pondered for a moment and then said, "Very well, if that is what you wish, I will go with you to Ram Singh, but not right now. We will go tomorrow morning." The disciple, still restless, said, "Gurudev, by then it will be too late." Buddha smiled and said, "Dear one, after the night, the day always comes. If it is so important, remind me tomorrow." Seeing no other choice, the disciple reluctantly left. Night passed, and morning arrived. Buddha continued his daily meditation and practices. The disciple, too, became engaged in his daily activities. As the day went on, he gradually forgot about the previous day's incident. By noon, Buddha himself approached the disciple and asked, "My son, today we were supposed to visit Ram Singh. Do you still wish to go?" The disciple remained silent for a moment. Then, lowering his head, he humbly said, "Gurudev, there is no need to go now. I reflected on the incident yesterday, and I realized that perhaps the mistake was mine. In my emotions, I felt that Ram Singh had insulted me, but in reality, I was the one who allowed his words to affect me. Now, it all seems meaningless to me." Buddha smiled and said, "This is exactly what I wanted you to understand, dear one. If we react immediately to an insult, it only fills our hearts with more bitterness. But if we remain patient and allow time to pass, that bitterness naturally fades away." The disciple now fully grasped Buddha's profound teaching. With deep reverence, he bowed at Buddha's feet and said, Gurudev, you have taught me a great lesson today. From now on, I will never react immediately to an insult. Instead, I will practice patience and reflect on whether anyone can truly insult me at all. Buddha, pleased with his realization, blessed him and said, "Patience, forgiveness, and compassion bring true peace in life. The one who masters his own mind is the true victor." From that day forward, the disciple became even more calm, patient, and humble. He made it a rule in his life never to react impulsively to negativity, but to first reflect with patience and wisdom. Moral of the story: practice patience. Instead of reacting immediately to a negative situation, take time to reflect. An insult is only effective if you accept it. If we do not allow negative words to enter our minds, they cannot affect us. Time is the greatest healer. As time passes, emotions change. Anger and bitterness naturally fade away. True strength lies in self-control. The one who can control his mind is the true winner in life. Embrace forgiveness and compassion. Forgiveness and compassion lead to inner peace and true enlightenment. Conquering anger is the greatest victory. In ancient times, there lived a very wealthy merchant in a grand city. He was the owner of immense riches. His vaults were filled with gold, silver, diamonds, and precious jewels. He had magnificent palaces, numerous servants, and every luxury one could imagine. However, there was one thing that always made him deeply sad. He was childless. The merchant was greatly troubled by his lack of children. He felt that all his wealth was meaningless if he had no heir to inherit it. In his desperation to find a solution, he sought the guidance of countless sages, astrologers, tantrics, and priests. He performed countless rituals, ceremonies, and sacrifices, but all his efforts were in vain. Years passed, yet his arms remained empty. Meanwhile, his greed grew even more. He became obsessed with expanding his business and accumulating more wealth. His vaults kept filling up, but the emptiness in his heart never ceased to trouble him. One day, news spread that Gautam Buddha had arrived in the city with his monks. The merchant had heard of Buddha's great wisdom and compassion, and how his words had the power to transform lives. The merchant thought, "I have met so many saints and spiritual leaders. Why not seek the advice of Buddha as well?" With this thought, he set out the next morning and bowed before Buddha. With a sorrowful heart, the merchant expressed his grief. "Lord, I have immense wealth, but I have no child. I have tried everything, but I remain deprived of the joy of fatherhood. Please tell me how to have a child." Buddha smiled gently, placed a compassionate hand on his head, and said, "Have patience. Whatever is destined to happen will surely happen." Time passed, and by a fortunate turn of events, the merchant was blessed with a child. He was overjoyed and filled with deep gratitude towards Buddha. Now, the merchant began thinking about how he could express his thanks to Buddha. After much thought, he decided to present a chest filled with precious diamonds and jewels as an offering to him. One day, the merchant approached Buddha, bowed before him, and said with deep emotion, "Lord, it is by your grace that I have been blessed with a child. I wish to do something for you. Please accept this humble offering as a token of my gratitude." Buddha looked at the chest but immediately refused it. In a calm voice, he said, "I have no need for these riches. Keep them with you." The merchant insisted again, "Lord, this is a small gesture of my thankfulness. Please do not refuse it." Buddha then said in a serious tone, "I do not accept donations from the poor." The merchant was stunned. He could not believe what he had just heard. With great surprise, he asked, "Lord, how can I be poor? I possess immeasurable wealth. My vaults are overflowing with gold, silver, and diamonds. I work tirelessly day and night, multiplying my fortune. How can I be considered poor?" Buddha smiled and explained, "A truly wealthy person is not one who has vast riches, but one who is content. Despite having immense wealth, your desires remain unfulfilled, and your greed has not subsided. You constantly crave more. This is your poverty. A person who is never satisfied is truly poor, because one who is endlessly thirsty for more can never be happy." The merchant felt as if a bolt of lightning had struck him. For the first time, he realized that his real deficiency was not in wealth, but in contentment. Buddha's words opened his eyes. He understood that contentment is the greatest wealth. At that very moment, he decided to renounce his greed and distributed a large portion of his fortune to those in need. From then on, he no longer pursued wealth for the sake of hoarding it, but found joy in serving society and helping others. He finally became truly wealthy and truly happy. Moral of the story: contentment is the greatest wealth. Greed and endless desires never allow a person to be happy. True prosperity lies in being satisfied with what one is rather than running blindly after more. A content person is the only one who is truly happy. The end of greed is the ultimate bliss. A long time ago, there lived a very wealthy man in a city. He was well known for his generosity and charity towards the poor and helpless. His benevolence was a topic of discussion throughout the city. However, there was a flaw in his giving. He talked about it more than he actually gave. Whenever he helped a poor or needy person, he made sure they felt indebted to him. People who received his aid felt more burdened and pressured than grateful. This man believed that no one in the world was as generous as he was. He took great pride in his charity and always boasted about his generosity. One day, he heard that Mahatma Buddha had arrived in the city and was transforming people's lives through his teachings. Curious, the wealthy man decided to meet Buddha. He wanted to see for himself what kind of person commanded such deep respect from people. When he reached Buddha, he bowed at his feet and sat down to talk. However, during the conversation, he began speaking about himself. He went on for a long time, praising his own generosity and social service. Gurudev, I always help the poor and needy. I have opened many food shelters to ensure no one goes hungry. Helping the helpless is my life's mission. I'm always ready to serve others, he says. Mahatma Buddha listened to him silently. He could clearly sense the arrogance in his words, but he chose not to say anything immediately. As the wealthy man prepared to leave, he signaled to his assistant. The assistant immediately stepped forward and placed a bag full of money at Buddha's feet. Buddha glanced at the bag and then looked at the rich man with a questioning expression. The wealthy man smiled and said, Mahatma, I have heard that you are engaged in many charitable activities, but due to a lack of funds, you may not be able to do as much as you wish. I thought of helping you a little. Please accept this donation. Mahatma Buddha understood the hidden arrogance behind his false humility. Smiling, he replied, I do not need your wealth. I need you. The rich man was taken aback. This was the first time someone had refused his charity. Until now, people had always bowed before him in gratitude when receiving his money, but here things were completely different. He felt confused and somewhat offended. He asked Buddha, why did you reject my donation? Do you not need it? Mahatma Buddha smiled and said, Seth, you did not offer charity. You merely put on a display of it. Your intention was not to help, but to seek admiration for yourself. True charity is when the giver dedicates not just their wealth, but also themselves. The rich man, puzzled, asked, Gurudev, what does that mean? Buddha patiently explained, charity means equal distribution. It is an act of selflessness. Never forget that the excess wealth you possess actually belongs to others, and you are merely returning it. Therefore, there should be no sense of, I have given, or pride in it. If you truly wish to help, do so with humility, without making others feel indebted to you. Buddha continued, Seth, if you genuinely want to donate, do so without arrogance, with a pure heart. When you give with a mindset that it is someone's right and not your favor, then I will gladly accept it. Buddha's profound words deeply shook the rich man's heart. He realized that until now, he had only given for the sake of showing off, to feel superior to others. With great reverence, he bowed at Buddha's feet and said, Buddha, you have opened my eyes. From today, I will not consider charity as a means to boost my ego, but as an opportunity to serve with humility. I will give in such a way that the receiver feels no hesitation but rather recognizes it as their rightful share. From that day onwards, the wealthy man changed the way he gave. He continued to donate, but without pride or showmanship. His heart was now filled with genuine compassion and selfless service. Moral of the story, true charity is about helping others, not seeking praise. Charity accompanied by arrogance is not charity, but mere display. The real purpose of giving should be equality and service. True altruism means dedicating not just wealth, but also oneself. Genuine charity is when the giver feels no pride and the receiver feels no shame. Charity is when the giver dedicates not just their wealth, but also themselves. The teachings of Lord Buddha have been translated into the Japanese language, but funds were needed for their publication. No wealthy person was willing to help with this cause. Then a poor Buddhist monk decided to undertake the task himself. He began collecting donations from individuals, gathering a total of 10,000 rupees, which was sufficient to print the scriptures. However, before the scriptures could be printed, severe famine struck the region. People and animals alike suffered from hunger. Witnessing this suffering, the monk used the entire amount to aid the famine victims. People were astonished and asked how the scriptures would now be printed. But the monk remained calm. Once the famine was over, he started collecting funds again. He once more gathered 10,000 rupees, but this time a devastating earthquake struck. Seeing the distress of the affected people, he again donated the entire amount for their welfare. Once again, people were amazed by his actions and even called him a fool. Now, the monk had grown old, yet his patience and dedication remained unwavering. He once again started collecting donations and, for the third time, managed to gather 10,000 rupees. Fortunately, this time no disaster occurred, and the scriptures were finally published. However, when the scriptures were printed, the cover page read, "Third edition." Below it was written, "The first two editions were truly outstanding." This story teaches us that true service and dedication to humanity are greater than any goal. The monk never abandoned his objective, but he prioritized serving humanity first. This incident also highlights that sacrifice, patience, and selfless service are the true paths to success. It was an event from ancient times. Lord Buddha was delivering a sermon in Vaishali. A vast gathering had assembled to listen to his divine words. The entire assembly was immersed in deep silence and devotion. Every devotee was attentively listening to Buddha's nectar-like teachings. With his gentle voice, Buddha was explaining the greatness of dharma, nonviolence, love, and compassion. His words were filling everyone's hearts with peace. The entire atmosphere was charged with spiritual energy. Suddenly, the calm atmosphere of the assembly was disturbed. A man standing outside the gathering, filled with great anger, started shouting loudly, "Why was I not allowed to sit in this assembly today?" All the disciples and people present were astonished and turned to look at him. Expressions of surprise and uneasiness appeared on the faces of the audience. Buddha remained silent, but the man shouted again, "Why was I not allowed to enter the assembly?" Buddha slowly closed his eyes and maintained absolute silence. One of Buddha's chief disciples humbly said, "Lord, please allow this person to join the assembly. He is also your disciple." The disciples started wondering. There is no discrimination in Buddha's teachings. Then why did he prevent this man from entering? Buddha slowly opened his eyes and, in a serious tone, said, "No, he is untouchable." Hearing these words, all the disciples and the entire assembly were shocked. A disciple gathered courage and asked, "Lord, there is no caste discrimination in your teachings. Then why did you call him untouchable?" Buddha peacefully replied, "Today, this man is filled with anger. He is consumed by internal violence. He has destroyed the peace of his own soul. Anger makes a person impure from within." Buddha further explained, "Anyone who harbors anger for any reason becomes untouchable. Anger is mental violence. It darkens a person from within." A deep silence spread across the assembly. Everyone fell into deep thought. The man, who was burning in anger, was deeply moved by Buddha's words. He realized that he had indeed become impure from within. His inner peace and love had been lost due to anger. Slowly, the man became serious. He closed his eyes and tried to look within himself. After some time, the man humbly fell at Buddha's feet and said, "Lord, I have realized my mistake. Please forgive me and show me the true path of dharma." Buddha smiled and said, "Abandon anger and follow the path of peace. Nonviolence is the supreme dharma. If a person frees himself from anger, he becomes pure." Now the man was free from anger. His heart became pure and peaceful. Lessons from the story. Anger is a form of mental violence that destroys a person from within. A person who harbors anger pollutes his own mind and heart. Only a calm mind and intellect can make wise decisions. True purity is of the mind and heart, not just external appearance. Buddha's teachings do not judge people by caste, color, or birth, but by their thoughts and actions. We must strive to abandon anger and embrace peace, love, and compassion in our lives. True impurity is not external, but internal. If we can free ourselves from anger, jealousy, and hatred, our lives can become pure and sacred. Nonviolence is the supreme dharma. In the Mahabharata, Bhishma Pitama was granted the boon of Icham death at will. He could remain alive until he willingly chose to embrace death. Many legends are associated with immortality, but what is the true secret of immortality? Is immortality only linked to the physical body, or is there something else that can make someone immortal? To answer this profound question, Gautama Buddha once gave a practical example to his disciples. One day, Buddha set out with his disciples for alms outside the city. Along the way, his disciples were engaged in discussions on various topics. Their minds were filled with questions about life, death, and immortality. Suddenly, they noticed a small plant firmly rooted in the ground. Its lush green leaves and growing size indicated that it was full of life. One of the disciples pointed to the plant and asked Buddha, "Bani, what is the lifespan of this plant?" Buddha smiled and replied, "This is an immortal tree. Its age is infinite." The disciples found this answer strange. They began to wonder, when all living beings and trees eventually perish, how can this plant be immortal? One of the disciples was extremely inquisitive. He wanted to test the truth behind Buddha's words. Without thinking twice, he grabbed the tiny plant firmly and uprooted it from the ground. Holding it in his hand, he turned to Buddha and said, "Gurudev, you said this plant is immortal, but look, I have destroyed it in an instant." Saying this, he looked at Buddha triumphantly, as if he had proven his words wrong. Buddha gazed at him with a calm expression, smiled gently, and did not say a word. He simply continued on his path. After the Chaturmas, the 4-month-long monsoon retreat, Buddha and his disciples returned along the same path. To their astonishment, the same place where the plant had been uprooted was now covered with fresh, green growth. The plant had grown back, appearing even denser and healthier than before. Its branches and leaves looked more vibrant and full of life than ever. The disciple who had uprooted the plant was stunned. He turned to Buddha and asked, "Tathagata, how did you know that this plant was immortal?" Buddha looked at the disciple with compassion and replied, "I knew the infinite will to live within this tiny plant. This is the first condition of life and immortality. Only those who possess this spirit can make their existence eternal." Buddha further explained, "Immortality does not lie in the mere existence of the physical body. A person, a living being, or even a plant that strives to survive and holds on to the will to live despite adversities, only they can achieve immortality. This tiny plant, as long as it continues to spread its roots, absorb nourishment from the soil, and reach for the sun, cannot be destroyed by anyone." Buddha's words left a deep impression on his disciples. They realized that true immortality is not about the body, but about the unyielding will to survive and grow despite all challenges. Moral of the story: this story teaches us that true immortality belongs to those who possess a strong will to survive and move forward, despite any difficulties. No matter how many times one is knocked down or how many obstacles are placed in their path, if their determination is strong enough, they will rise again and sustain their existence. This is the real essence of immortality.